The typical rental demographic in the Calgary market right now is a 35 to 45-year-old single. It would have been a couple previously, but now that's splitting. So we have 35 to 45-year-olds that could buy a home or could buy a condo, but are choosing to stay in a rental environment. So we need to provide, decent, sustainable apartments. Those aren't micro suites for 300 square feet for a couple to live in. That has to be sustainable, quality, housing. And so that's what we're trying to focus on. Do we think the 35 to 45-year-old demographic now will become a 45 to 55-year-old and still not be able to buy a home? Most likely. Yes. So is this demographic changing? No, it's maturing. So we will have to adapt with different type of amenity spaces and different type of attractions for maybe a mature demographic. And that could be a gathering space or a card room or golf simulator as amenity in a building. And so we have to adapt that and try and find ways to expand the demographic as that changed and approach different people in different ways.
Okay, so now let's talk about the challenges, that humanize you in the process of, building. Before we go there, what is the average return that your investors, consistently receive over this? Because what you're saying is that you're setting up a stream of annuities for that, 50 years, that is remarkable.
Yeah.
Right? So what is the expectation, I know there are no guarantees in anything, but you've been doing this for 15 years. What is that kind of?
Things changed in this asset class approximately 3 years ago, where traditionally it was more difficult to get second, third, and fourth mortgages. So for us to get a continual apartment mortgages were challenged, and leverage was challenged. We had to put significant amounts of cash in, and then there's no return. Lately, this segment, this asset class of purpose-built apartments has been much more favorable for lending. So we've been able to get decent mortgages. So our expectation of a return needs to be 14 to 18%. So we definitely need to be higher than the traditional 12%. And so a decent cash flow return should be 14%, a good product at 18%. And not only is the return decent, but it's actually the consistency of the return. That comes from two sources. One is the debt pay down. So the advantage here is we're doing consistent debt pay down with residents' rent. So it's a good vehicle to pay down debt and earn a return. The secondary component is just profitability from your rent over your expenses. So it generates a decent amount of profit and then a decent amount of debt pay down. Our targets are 14 to 18%. However, our short-term vision is 3 to 5 years. So we want to be obtaining, a decent 14% plus return over a 5-year period. So it's very healthy that when you're in year 2, you're in year 3, you're in year 4, the asset's producing and it's quite passive, and we should be earning this return if we have full buildings with maybe little dips, but it should be very consistent, stable over time. And then every 5-year window, we can make a choice. Do we want to keep paying down debt, or do we want to extract the value and have a good payoff every 5 years? So it has multiple streams of payoff. And traditionally, what we're seeing now is appreciation of the asset as well, that we don't take into account, but 5, 10, 15 years down the road, we would expect all these assets to appreciate over time.
That's very interesting. I was looking at the numbers, you shared in one of our chats, how that, when all of your units that you're currently working on, when they all come online, you are looking at annual rental income of about 20 million across 1,000 units you've got in your pipeline. That's staggering. Well, maybe not staggering. I mean, that is significant annual income from rental income, and, using a stabilized model like this, Is that, do you foresee any challenge around that could cause deviations from your projections, or have those been rather conservative?
No, I think there's challenges every day and every point, and that's our goal, to overcome them. So yes, I see financial challenges that we'll overcome, labor and people challenges, and housing challenges. So yes, there are some significant challenges in every way. For example, we just had interest rates that had gone up for a period of time and have now settled down. Well, there's some challenges there. We have to overcome those. So we're either borrowing smaller amounts or for shorter periods of time, or we're acting a little differently. But yeah, there will continue to be significant challenges, and I think that's where the opportunity comes from. Yeah.
Kent has a good attitude, right?
Yes, yeah. For 10 years, rents never changed. So there was no incentive. Now rents have gone up, and they've settled down a bit, but all of these opportunities are phenomenal, and these challenges really open up opportunities. So now that the rental model is not going away, people need housing, they're still moving here, housing is becoming more expensive. Yeah, we'll answer the challenge and provide good housing for people. For us internally, we've scaled up from smaller 50 to 100 unit buildings that now we have close to 1,000 units. So we've taken these big steps to scale up and control our business to be a full cycle developer from start to finish. Now we want to capitalize that and make our expertise available in a bigger way to capitalize, to try and get our unit count, hopefully up to 3,000 units, and we can capture an even, bigger segment of the market. And that's our next goal.
What time frame is that?
I would like to see in the next 3 years for us to get up to that speed. There are big opportunities in Calgary where you look at Vancouver and Toronto that are so dense. Well, Calgary still has parking lots downtown. We still have ample land. We still have good inner city locations. We have good fundamentals. So I see, this market in particular, Calgary and its sub-markets as being, very favorable for the near future.
Well, if you do scale up to 3,000, if you're doing 20 million in rental income on 1,000, that's 3x, so that will be, I will follow you as you develop that trajectory, right? So let's talk about, the humanizing aspects, for you in the midst of all of this, because I do like the way you said there are always challenges, and that's what creates the opportunities.
Yes.
That's powerful, right? So you anticipate, you look for the challenges, and then you pull out the opportunities, around and within them. So was there ever a time in the course of the 72-hour period where you felt, oh my gosh, everything is gonna great?
Do I think that or say that? Yes. The goal is to think that and not say it. Yes. They don't know I'm thinking that, but yeah, I think that's my role is to give people the confidence that we will overcome this. Yes. So that's perhaps my burden, but I think that all the time. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen next and what's going on and how are we going to overcome this? And yes, those are daily thoughts. But the message has to be no, the opposite. We can fix this. And I have engineers that are experts and construction managers that are knowledgeable and lenders and, my financial team, they're all smart in their own areas. So I'm a generalist. I've come up through this industry doing all the jobs, but I'm not excellent at any one job. So I really rely on all these people to play a role and temper my thoughts of what are we doing and what's happening and how are we going to overcome this with the confidence of the group that, sees our opportunity where they can shine by overcoming this challenge. Yes. So, the latest challenge of one building where the architect did a complicated design and then it went to the structural engineer. Well, he has to fix it. He has to uncomplicate it. And so that's my thoughts going, I'm not sure how he's going to do it, but he's the expert. He's going to figure it out. It's going to take him some time and he's going to work it through and he's going to get us a product that works much better with our standards and our cost expectations. And so that's just an example of overcoming this, where sometimes I don't know how they're going to overcome it. But together, we have to get these experts together to solve this problem.
Yeah, nice.
Hopefully it works.
So is there an example you have that you can share of how you've solved one of such complex, oh my gosh, it's breaking kind of problems, in an unconventional way or in a resourceful manner, and save the day? Is there an example you can share?
Well, probably not me. I try and provide the opportunity for people to solve these problems where it's not me. So in a people business, there's always people issues and personalities, and we try and be non-egocentric. But for example, on one job site, we have 3 difficult people and a hierarchy that's difficult. Well, what's the methodology for me? We're all going to come together. We're going to have conversations. We're going to be in the same room. So all of a sudden, instead of having 2 site trailers with different people in different environments, we get one big site trailer and everyone's working together. And then person A here's person B talking, and we're all going to get together. We're going to solve this problem together. So it's more of the philosophy of how we solve our problems, of no blame, solution focus, let's overcome this. And that's what I try and do. Because it's harder for me to actually solve engineering problems and construction problems. It's a challenging business where I rely on experts that frequently know more about my product than I do. And so it's getting the right people with the non-ego to solve the problem in a value-based way. And that's what we try and make sure there's an avenue to solve these problems.
What's the hardest thing you ever had to tell someone in any one of your people segments, whether it be the construction phase or the development? What's the hardest conversation you ever had to have?
The hardest conversations are by far when we get to the end box and we're telling someone you can't live in our apartment because of a certain criteria, where we've gone through this whole process and we get to the end and we have our product and we have someone that can't move in or that's not appropriate to move in. And that's actually the hardest decision. It's like we're saying no to someone else instead of them saying no to us. And it sounds strange, but it's not the hard construction conversations. It's not architects in the city and all these difficult things. It's you get to the end and we've made this product for people and someone wants to move into our building and maybe it's just not right. Maybe they don't have a job. Maybe, it's credit. Maybe it's not no ability to get a security deposit. And that's the hardest conversation, is when someone wants to move in and we have to say no. And you have to do that. We need to get the right resident in our building because we have a cash flow machine over time. We're not running a hotel. We need to get people to stay in our buildings. And sometimes it's not the right fit. And sometimes, the dog or the pet isn't the right fit. And we have to say, no, you can't move here because your dog's going to be barking too loud. And that's a common problem. So, yes.
Because of the dog?
Absolutely. Quiet enjoyment of your apartment is really what we're selling. Yes, the stove and the appliances, the kitchens, the flooring, but people are moving in with their stuff and they want quiet enjoyment. And so it takes away from quiet enjoyment is a negative. So we're going to have to say no to people based on a pet we don't know. And that's the hardest conversation. And we also, because we're accountable to our stakeholders and our shareholders to earn a return fast, we've done everything fast, we get to the end and we're saying no to people. And those are hard conversations.